everybody, this is Susan from Susan's Road Less Traveled, continuing on in our reading of How to Keep Your Volkswagen Alive, Chapter 2. This is going to be a long one. I may break it up into two because it's pretty detailed and I'm not even going to read the whole thing. So, Chapter 2 is How Works a Volkswagen. Along with word problems in math and Zen principles, the operation of a motor car seems to be a first water mystery. One definition of a mechanic is someone who looks at an automobile as a system. In this frame of reference, an idiot, then, would be one who looks at a car as a series of problems. Here is a generalized way to help you put a little light on how a car runs so you can dig it. So I highlighted a few things just to touch on the main topics. Note that front always means the front of the car. The wheels are important, all four of them, plus a spare in case one of the tires goes flat. In the Volkswagen, all four are free to bounce up and down with the vagaries of the road, individually suspended. The front two are mounted on hinged axles or kingpins so they can turn to give the car direction. The geometry is complicated, but the principle is easy. We'll see about that. There is a caster, camber, and toe-in, but they combine to give the best angle between the wheels and the road for maximum control, ease of handling, and comfort with minimum of tire wear. The rear wheels of the Volkswagen have an attitude, which is peculiar to cars with individually suspended driven wheels. The torsion bars are set for a normal position with a normal load, so the attitude of the wheels is dependent on the amount of the weight in the car. The steering force is applied by you to the steering wheel inside the car and is transmitted through a hollow rod to the steering box mounted on the frame, which changes the direction of the force to an arm which pushes and pulls the tie rods and tie rod ends and so changes the direction of the wheels. The horn is an electromagnetic device designed to make a noise and act as a warning signal. Meep. The hot wire from the battery goes through the fuse box to the horn. The ground wire to complete the circuit runs up through the hollow steering rod to the horn button. Pay attention. The brakes apply negative acceleration to stop the car. Negative acceleration. The brake drums are part of the wheels and the stopping force is friction applied to these drums by brake linings on brake shoes, which are hinged at one point and pushed apart at the opposite point by a hydraulic wheel cylinder. These wheel cylinders are slave cylinders and are operated by the master cylinder. That could be a little iffy today, which is moved by the brake pedal inside the car. When you push your foot down on the brake pedal, you move the master cylinder, which pushes on the brake fluid, and that movement is transmitted evenly to the four wheel cylinders, and the brake lining is shoved against the drums to stop the wheel and thus stop the car. Okay? Disc brakes are found on the front wheels of late model Type 2s, 3s, and 4s. I'm going to skip that. The emergency brake is a pair of cables which pull the front shoes of the rear brakes into contact with the drums. The handle in the car has notches and a release, to hold and let go the tension in the cable, and therefore the braking action. Don't drive with it on. The two rear wheels are powered by swing drive shafts, which extend to each wheel from the differential, a device used to allow one wheel to travel at a different speed from another. This is needed to go around curves, as the inside wheel on a curve travels a shorter path than the outside wheel. It is well known in human endeavor that we try to make the outside like the inside for sanity, but here the inside is obviously not possibly the same as the outside. Ergo, the internal adjustment in a car, the differential. The railroad people ingeniously used a flanged tapered wheel and centrifugal force to enable them to use a solid axle between the wheels. The differential cutaway view. The differential also changes the direction of the twist from the round and round of the motor to the round and round of the wheels. For this, it uses the ring and pinion gears. Actually, in the Volkswagen, the axles also move up and down with the road, and they are spade-ended shafts that fit into sockets which let them operate in separate planes. Late models have shafts that bolt to the differential and use two universal joints to transfer the power to the wheels. The transmission is a box containing many gears, shafts, retainers, shifting mechanisms, and is complicated in the extreme, but operates on the simple principle that a larger gear will make less revolutions when driven by a smaller gear. In the VW, high gear is arranged so the twist from the engine makes almost the same number of revolutions going out as when it came in. The Volkswagen engine works best between 2,000 and 3,500 RPM. The transmission is connected to the engine through the clutch, a spring-loaded friction device which connects and disconnects the engine from the car for starting, idling, and shifting. The flywheel provides one face and the clutch assembly provides the other, with the two-surfaced clutch plate between. The clutch assembly is spring-loaded and presses the clutch plate between its surface and the surface of the flywheel to make the connection. And you know how important that is. When you push on the clutch pedal in the car, you are actually compressing the springs in the clutch assembly through a lever and the clutch release bearing and letting the clutch plate run free, effectively disconnecting the engine from the transmission. Couple more things, and then we're going to break for part 2. The flywheel, a heavy machined chunk of steel, serves a triple purpose. The machined face acts as part of the clutch. There are teeth all around the outer circumference, which the starter assembly engages to turn the engine over for starting. It also serves as a heavy rotating body bolted to the end of the crankshaft to maintain the revolving inertia of the engine through its cycles. The crankshaft is fastened to the flywheel with 4 pins and a gland nut. It runs in 4 bearings called main bearings, which are massive and pressure lubricated. The crankshaft has 4 cranks or throws, which serve to translate the back and forth movement of the pistons through the connecting rods into the round and round motion of the crankshaft and flywheel assembly. The connecting rod bearings are also pressure lubricated. Both the main and connecting rod bearings are thin shells, which can be replaced as they wear. The crankshaft assembly looks like so. Crankshaft and assembly. Stop the video and zoom in. Last but not least, the crankcase is a split aluminum casting machined in the proper places, which contains that portion of the engine known as the bottom end. The main bearings and the camshaft bearings run through the case so that one half of the bearing is on each part of the case. Can't keep up. Camshaft is geared to the crankshaft and has cams or lobes which operate the cam followers, which in turn push the push rods which operate the valves. Oh my goodness. The crankcase also acts as an oil sump to collect, store, and help cool the oil that is pumped through the bearings by the oil pump. The crankshaft has a funny sideways gear called a worm gear pressed on the shaft next to the camshaft drive gear. This worm gear turns the distributor drive, which has a slot on top that turns the distributor and an off-center bump which operates the fuel pump through a push rod. The oil pump fits into a slot in the end of the camshaft and turns with it. In older models, the camshaft bearings are merely machined into the crankcase, but in later models, they have installed bearing shells to take the wear. On the opposite end of the crankshaft from the flywheel is attached the crankshaft pulley, which drives the generator or alternator with a belt. We'll stop there for today. And when we come back for chapter 2, part 2, we'll pick up with the pistons. So stay tuned.